Millions watched as Trump tried to command the room, but no one expected Jasmine Crocker to snap back with a line so precise it froze the entire stage. By the end of the night she wasn't just another lawmaker, she had become a national jolt. "Did you see the crowd outside?" someone whispered behind the curtain. The air inside the Des Moines auditorium felt dense, electric, the kind of charged atmosphere that made even veteran politicians question their next breath. Every seat was filled. Cameras from every major network cluttered the aisles. Social feeds were erupting in real time. On paper, the event was about the economy. Everyone there knew it was about to become something much larger. President Donald Trump was scheduled for a live, nationally televised town hall. His team had promised openness, clarity, authority. Backstage, nothing felt controlled. Staff traded anxious whispers, earpieces crackled, aides refreshed their screens to check updates from the protests outside. A few steps away, Representative Jasmine Crocker adjusted the clip on her mic. She hardly spoke. Her quiet wasn't fear, it was discipline. While the people around her ran through lines and talking points, she repeated a simple mantra in her mind: stay calm, stay sharp, stay honest. Trump's voice boomed down the hallway before he even appeared. "Let's give them a show tonight," he said loud enough for half the crew to hear. He meant it, his presence filled the space like static. Cameras fed on him. Crowds fed on drama. Jasmine knew that blend could ignite faster than anyone expected. Moderator Tom Langley called the 2-minute warning. Technicians adjusted lights. A makeup artist blotted the last traces of shine. Jasmine looked at her reflection in a side monitor. Steady eyes, still hands. A quiet balance that clashed with the chaos around her. Behind her, Trump paced, not planning, just pacing. His campaign manager murmured something, but he brushed it off. Strategy wasn't his goal tonight. Dominance was. When the red light blinked on, everything shifted. Applause roared as Trump strode out, waving confidently. Jasmine followed with a controlled smile. The noise fell into a sharp hush as Langley opened the program. "Tonight we discuss the future of the economy, jobs, equity, leadership." But everyone watching knew those weren't the only forces in play. Trump leaned forward before the first question was finished, jittery, irritated, as if the moderator's words were an inconvenience. Jasmine observed him closely, not with hostility, but recognition. She'd dealt with men like this before, loud, reactive, convinced that power came from volume. "Mr. President," the journalist began, "how do you respond to criticism about your handling of last month's protests?" The question had barely landed before Trump burst in. "I've done more for this country than anyone. No one handled it better than me. Those protests were chaos, and we ended it. Nobody gives me credit." The room's energy shifted. Some clapped. Some murmured that he wasn't responding, he was performing. Jasmine sat motionless. Hands folded. Her expression unreadable. Langley attempted to redirect. "Let's stay focused on policy." Trump cut him off. "I am talking about policy. Law and order is policy. People don't want chaos. They want strength. And that's what I bring." Jasmine leaned toward her mic, as though weighing whether to speak. The tension tightened. Cameras zoomed in, sensing the moment changing shape. Trump glanced at her with a smirk. "Looks like you've got something to say." A soft ripple of laughter passed through the audience. Jasmine's voice came out controlled, not confrontational. "I do," she said. "I think strength depends on who gets to define it." Trump tilted his head, pretending confusion. "Oh yeah? And what's your definition?" "Listening," she answered. "Especially when people are hurting." Silence hit the room like cold air, not because it was theatrical, but because it was true. Trump shifted in his seat, agitated. Jasmine continued, "You can't fix what you refuse to acknowledge." People weren't protesting because they hate this country. They were asking it to honor its own promises. Trump scoffed. "Here we go with the speeches." Her gaze didn't move. "It's not a speech," she said quietly. "It's reality." For a moment, the silence between them said more than anything spoken. The audience was locked in it, half uneasy, half intrigued. Trump's expression tightened. He looked toward the moderator, hoping to pivot. But the cameras had already caught that tiny flash of irritation. Jasmine stayed composed, steady as a metronome. She didn't know it yet, but the next few minutes would erupt into a viral moment replayed across the country. Something inside her shifted, a certainty that truth had brushed up against power, and power bristled, but it was only the start, and what followed would push the night from heated exchange into national spotlight. The second round of questions was meant to bring the discussion back to economics. But Trump wasn't finished defending himself. He wasn't just agitated, he was hungry for a clash. Reporters in the front row lifted their phones, sensing the temperature rising. Langley tried again. Let's turn to small business recovery. Many owners say federal support still hasn't reached them. Trump surged forward, slicing off the question. Fake news. I've done more for small businesses than any president, period. Everyone knows it. The only ones complaining are the ones who don't want to work. His tone had shifted from defensive to outright combative. He gestured at the audience, daring them to push back. A few cheered. Most didn't. The air grew heavy again. Jasmine Crocker sat 2 seats away, the picture of stillness, watching the storm build. Langley finally turned to her. Representative Crocker, would you like to respond? Trump threw up a hand before she could speak. Oh, she'll talk. They always talk. That's all Congress does, talk. The audience gasped. The moderator froze. And just like that, the tension finally cracked open. Jasmine looked at him directly, no smile, no fear. With all due respect, Mr. President, she said slowly, talking is how democracy works. It's called debate. Trump scoffed. You call that democracy? What I see is obstruction. Every time I try to help the American people, politicians like you stand in the way. Jasmine leaned closer to her mic. Or maybe, she said, people like me are reminding you that leadership isn't just about shouting the loudest. A few people in the audience laughed nervously. Trump's face shifted from orange to crimson. He pointed at her like he was scolding a child. You don't talk to the president like that. Jasmine didn't flinch. Then perhaps the president should remember to act like one. The line hit the air like a spark on dry grass. Gasps, laughs, whispers, everything collided at once. Trump's jaw tightened, his fingers digging into the armrest. He wasn't used to being challenged without instant submission. He leaned toward her. You think you're smart, huh? You think you can lecture me? I've built empires. You've built what? Twitter followers. The crowd split between laughter and shock. Jasmine didn't blink. Empires fall, she said softly. But respect lasts. Everything stopped. The steady click of cameras, the murmurs from the crew, even the coughs from the back row, all evaporated under that one sentence. Tom Langley's voice came back, fragile and trembling. All right, let's remember, folks, we're here to talk about economic policy. But Trump wasn't letting go. He was red-faced now, every gesture sharp and erratic. Policy doesn't matter if the country's being destroyed from within. You've got people burning flags, attacking police, hating America, and people like you feed that hate. Jasmine took a slow breath, deliberate and steady. She didn't match his volume. She didn't have to. People aren't hating America, she said. They're asking it to live up to the promises it made them. The audience murmured again, some even clapping. Trump laughed mockingly. You sound like one of those activists on TV, angry about everything, offering nothing. That's when Jasmine leaned back slightly and let out a small, controlled smile, not smug, just disbelieving. Mr. President, she said, pausing just long enough for every camera to tighten its zoom, if I wanted to debate with a toddler, I'd have brought juice boxes. The room erupted, laughter, gasps, even applause from corners that had been silent all night. The moderator's eyes widened. Staff offstage froze. Trump blinked, processing the hit. His face hardened. You think that's funny? You think it's professional to insult the President of the United States on national television? Jasmine didn't raise her voice. No, she said. I think it's necessary to remind the country that leadership requires maturity. The energy in the room shifted completely. Trump wasn't steering the moment anymore, he was chasing it. Every word that followed sounded like a scramble. Disrespectful, he barked. Completely disrespectful to the office. Jasmine stayed still. Respect is earned through leadership, she replied, not tantrums. The applause this time was louder, sharper. Even Tom Langley had to hide a smile behind his papers. The camera caught Trump's expression, an awkward, frozen half-smile that couldn't mask the fury behind his eyes. Inside the hall, the silence that followed felt dangerous. Unmistakable. Everyone sensed that something irreversible had just happened. Trump adjusted his tie, muttering under his breath. Jasmine didn't respond. She didn't need to. She had already said everything that mattered. Outside the walls, phones were lighting up. Reporters rushing to upload clips. Within minutes, the story would stop being a town hall and start becoming a cultural earthquake. The studio lights were harsh, but they weren't what made the room sweat. It was the silence that followed Jasmine's words. Respect is earned through leadership, not tantrums. A line that hung in the air like smoke. Even the camera operators hesitated for a heartbeat before snapping back into motion. Trump shifted again, his smile stretched too thin. He leaned toward his mic, lowering his voice as if volume alone could regain control. You know, people like you have a real attitude problem. Always talking about respect. But you don't show any. Not to me, not to the presidency, not to the country. He waited. Expected applause. Expected comfort, but instead, an awkward pause. A hesitation. Almost defiance. Some who had cheered him earlier were now still, watching Jasmine instead. She didn't move. Mr. President, she said softly, respect isn't blind loyalty. It's accountability. That's what this office was built on. Trump snorted. Accountability? I've done more in 4 years than any of you could dream of. You want to talk accountability? Talk about Congress doing nothing but wasting time. Jasmine tilted her head slightly, her voice steady and almost surgical. Accountability means facing questions, not dodging them. You're not on trial. But you are responsible. The audience gasped, the moderator froze, and the tension finally snapped wide open. Jasmine met his gaze directly, no smile, no hesitation. With all due respect, Mr. President, she said slowly, talking is how democracy functions. It's called a debate. Trump scoffed. You call that democracy? What I see is obstruction. Every time I try to help the American people, politicians like you get in the way. Jasmine leaned toward her mic. Or maybe, she said, people like me are reminding you that leadership is more than being the loudest in the room. A few people laughed nervously. Trump's face darkened from orange to a flaring crimson. He jabbed a finger at her like she was a misbehaving child. You don't talk to the president like that. Jasmine didn't move. Then maybe the president should remember to act like one. The line hit the hall like a spark thrown into dry brush. The crowd reacted instantly, gasps, startled laughter, frantic whispers. Trump's jaw clenched, his fingers digging into the armrest. He wasn't used to being challenged without instant surrender. He leaned toward her, voice dripping with contempt. You think you're clever? You think you can lecture me? I've built empires. You've built what? Twitter followers. The audience erupted, half laughing, half stunned. Jasmine remained unblinking. Empires crumble, she said quietly. But respect lasts a little longer. Everything stilled. The cameras clicked softly, the murmurs stopped, even the background coughs vanished. Tom Langley cleared his throat, his voice fragile. Okay, folks, let's remember why we're here. Economic policy, let's stay on track. But Trump wasn't done. His gestures were sharp now, his face flushed. Policy doesn't matter if the country's falling apart. You've got people burning flags, attacking police, hating America, and people like you encourage it. Jasmine inhaled, slow and controlled. She didn't raise her voice. People aren't hating America, she said. They're asking it to live up to what it promised them. The crowd murmured. Some even clapped. Trump laughed, a hollow, mocking sound. you sound like one of those activists. Angry about everything, offering nothing. Jasmine leaned back slightly and let a small, disbelieving smile cross her face. Mr. President, she said, pausing just long enough for every camera to tighten its shot, if I wanted to debate a toddler, I would have brought juice boxes. The room detonated, laughter, gasps, scattered applause. The moderator's eyes widened. Staff offstage froze. Trump blinked, registering the blow. His face hardened. You think that's funny? You think it's professional to insult the President of the United States on live television? Jasmine didn't raise her voice. No. I think it's necessary to remind the country that leadership requires maturity. The room shifted, completely. Suddenly Trump wasn't steering the moment anymore. He was reacting, scrambling, disrespectful, he barked. Totally disrespectful to the office. Jasmine remained still. Respect is earned through leadership, not tantrums. Applause burst across the hall. Tom Langley hid a smile behind his notes. The camera caught Trump's frozen half-grin, the rage simmering behind his eyes. That it was quiet, dead quiet. Everyone felt something irreversible had just happened. Trump straightened his tie, muttering under his breath. Jasmine didn't look his way. She didn't need to. Meanwhile outside, phones were lighting up, reporters racing to upload clips. Within minutes, the story would stop being a town hall and start becoming a cultural earthquake. The studio lights were harsh, but it wasn't heat making everyone sweat, it was the sentence that still hung like smoke in the air. Respect is earned through leadership, not tantrums. Trump tried to recover. People like you always talk about respect, he snarled softly, but you don't show any. Not to me, not to the presidency, not to the country. He waited for applause. None came. More hesitation. People were watching Jasmine now. She didn't flinch. Respect isn't blind loyalty, she said gently. It's accountability. That's what the presidency was built on. Trump snorted. Accountability? I've done more in 4 years than any of you could dream of. If you want accountability, look at Congress wasting time. Jasmine tilted her head. Accountability means answering questions, not dodging them. You're not on trial. But you are responsible. Her calm only made his agitation more obvious. Trump leaned forward again, cutting her off. You're grandstanding. This is your big moment, huh? You think the cameras love you? They're laughing at you. Tom Langley looked like a referee without a whistle, glancing between them nervously. Let's take a breath, he tried, but Trump wasn't breathing. Don't tell me to take a breath, he snapped. This woman's been disrespecting me all night, disrespecting the American people. That was when Jasmine broke her stillness. She leaned toward the mic, eyes unwavering. I'm not disrespecting anyone, sir. I'm just not afraid of you. Another gasp rolled through the crowd. Even the moderator froze mid-page. Trump slammed his palm on the table. You should be afraid. You don't talk to the president like that. Jasmine didn't even blink. The title doesn't make the man, she said. The behavior does. Trump puffed out a frustrated breath. You're all the same, angry, jealous, ungrateful, and you prove my point every time you open your mouth. The crowd broke, laughter, disbelief, shock. Even the crew looked stunned. Langley raised a hand. Let's keep this civil, please. But the night had already slipped past civility. This was no longer about policy. It was about presence, steadiness, truth. Trump tried again. I came here to talk about real issues, not trade insults with an angry congresswoman who doesn't respect her president. Jasmine answered immediately. You came here to perform, not to lead. And the people watching can see the difference. He blinked. The words hit him hard. His rhythm, insult, defend, brag, was gone. Jasmine had cut it clean. Langley jumped in, desperate. Okay, audience questions next, but Trump barked over him. No. I want to finish this. You think you're so tough, so righteous, he snarled. Where were you when cities were burning? When people needed real action? Jasmine stayed calm. I was there. Talking to families. To small business owners who lost everything. Listening, because leadership begins there. Not behind a camera. Not behind a slogan. Her tone sharpened slightly. People don't want someone telling them how great he is. They want someone who listens when they're hurting. For the first time all night, Trump didn't interrupt. His mouth opened, then closed. Silence stretched long enough to hear camera shutters clicking. Finally, he laughed, a thin, forced sound. You're very emotional, aren't you? Jasmine gave a faint smile. No. Just human. The applause that followed was louder, unrestrained. Something in the room had shifted. This wasn't politics anymore. It was tone, empathy, authenticity, all the things Trump couldn't manufacture on live TV. Langley's earpiece buzzed. The control room was panicking about whether to cut to commercial. He signaled hold. This was history. Trump's face tightened again. You're gonna regret that attitude, he growled. People don't like disrespect. Jasmine didn't hesitate. Then maybe they're tired of watching it. That ended it. Reporters were already typing, thumbs flying. Clips were uploading. The moment had become a headline before the segment was even over. Langley finally stepped in, voice shaky. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll continue our discussion on small business support. The cameras faded. The applause faltered. Off air, the chaos continued. Trump spun toward his aides, furious. Jasmine quietly sipped her water, her expression unreadable. A stagehand leaned in. You okay? She gave a small, tired smile. I've been through worse. But as the crew reset, no one realized what was already happening. Clips exploding across social media, and Jasmine's calm defiance becoming the defining moment of the night. When the broadcast returned, the tension hadn't faded, it had fermented. Whispers filled the room. Everyone pretended to be calm, but they were all replaying what had just happened. Even the crew looked rattled. Trump's team had crowded around him during the break, whispering strategy. His communications director, Rick Delano, leaned close. Sir, just stick to jobs. Pivot. Cool it off. Don't give her more oxygen. Trump waved him away. No. I don't back down. Nobody talks to me like that. Especially not her. Across the stage, Jasmine sat quietly reviewing her notes, though everyone knew she didn't need them. Her heartbeat was steady, but she could feel every eye trained on her. The crowd sucked in a breath, the moderator went still, and the pressure that had been building finally split wide open. Jasmine looked straight at him, no grin, no tremor, just steady, razor-calm focus. With all due respect, Mr. President, she said slowly, talking is literally how democracy works. It's called debate. Trump snorted. You call that democracy? What I see is obstruction. Every time I try to help the American people, politicians like you get in the way. Jasmine leaned in slightly. Or maybe, she said, people like me remind you that leadership isn't measured by who yells the loudest. A few people in the audience gave nervous, startled laughs. Trump's face flushed darker, almost crimson, and he jabbed a finger at her like he was scolding a misbehaving child. You don't talk to the president like that. She didn't even blink. Then perhaps the president should remember to act like one. The sentence hit the air like a spark dropped in dry brush, and the reaction was instant. Gasps. Laughter. Whispered disbelief. Trump's jaw tightened until it looked painful, his hand gripping the armrest like it might break off. You think you're smart, huh? He growled, leaning toward her. You think you can lecture me? I built empires. You built what? Twitter followers. Half the audience laughed, half winced. Jasmine stayed perfectly still. Empires crumble, she answered softly. Respect lasts. Everything froze for just a beat, the camera shutters, the murmurs, even the coughs in the back row. That one line had sliced through the room. The moderator tried to salvage control, his voice thin. All right, let's try to remember we're here to discuss economic policy. But Trump wasn't letting go. His gestures grew sharp and frantic. Policy doesn't matter if the country's falling apart. You've got people burning flags, attacking police, hating America, and people like you feed that hate. Jasmine drew in a slow breath, her voice level. People aren't hating America, she said. They're begging America to live up to what it promised. The crowd murmured again, louder this time. Trump laughed, a mocking bark. You sound just like those activists on TV. Mad about everything. Offering nothing. Jasmine sat back slightly and smiled, not smug, but tired and certain. Mr. President, she said, pausing just long enough for every camera in the room to find her, if I wanted to debate with a toddler, I'd have brought juice boxes. The explosion of sound was immediate, laughter, gasps, applause, even the moderator looked like he'd swallowed air wrong. Trump blinked, stunned, then scowled. You think that's funny? Professional? Insulting the president on national television? Jasmine didn't raise her voice. No, she said. I think it's necessary to remind the country that leadership requires maturity. This time the applause was louder, fierce and rising. The energy shifted like the room itself had taken sides. Trump stared at her, the tight smile unable to hide the fury behind it. Social media would later tear that moment apart frame by frame, but inside the hall it felt like time had stopped. Something irreversible had just happened. Trump fussed with his tie, muttering under his breath, but Jasmine didn't respond. She didn't need to. Her point was already in the air, burning. Outside, phones were lighting up. Reporters were typing like their keyboards were on fire. Clips were already uploading. A political debate had turned into a cultural earthquake. The lights were still blistering overhead, but it wasn't the heat making everyone sweat, it was the silence after her words. Respect is earned through leadership, not tantrums. That one sentence seemed to cling to the walls. Trump leaned toward his mic, trying to reclaim ground with a low simmering tone. You know, people like you have a real attitude problem. Talking about respect when you show none, not to me, not to the presidency, not to the country. He waited for applause, for cheers, something. Instead, the room gave him a hesitant pause. People who had cheered earlier now just watched Jasmine. She kept her gaze steady. Mr. President, she said softly, respect isn't blind loyalty. It's accountability. That's what the office is supposed to stand for. Trump scoffed. Accountability? I've done more in 4 years than any of you dream of. You want accountability? Look at Congress wasting everyone's time. Jasmine tilted her head slightly. Accountability means answering questions, not dodging them. You're not on trial. But you are responsible. Her calmness only highlighted his growing irritation. He surged forward again. You're just grandstanding. Trying to get your big moment. You think the cameras love you? They're laughing at you. The moderator looked almost sick, glancing between them as if searching for an escape hatch. Let's take a breath, don't tell me to breathe. Trump snapped, this woman has disrespected me all night. Disrespected the American people. Jasmine finally shifted, her voice low but fearless. I'm not disrespecting anyone, sir. I'm just not afraid of you. A wave of gasps swept through the audience. Even the moderator froze mid-page. Trump slammed his palm against the table. You should be afraid. You don't talk to the President of the United States like that. She kept her voice even. The title doesn't make the man. The behavior does. Trump sputtered, you're all the same, angry, jealous, ungrateful, and you're proving my point every time you open your mouth. This time the roar from the audience overwhelmed the microphones. Laughter, disbelief, applause all crashing together. The moderator raised his hand in a futile attempt to restore order. Please, folks, can we keep this civil? But the conversation had already left the rails. It wasn't about policy anymore. It was about presence. About truth. About who held the room. Trump tried again to regain footing. I came here to discuss real issues, not trade insults with an angry congresswoman who doesn't respect her president. She answered instantly, you came to put on a show. Not to lead. And people can tell the difference. That line stopped him cold. His rhythm, insult, deny, boast, was broken. Langley jumped in, desperate, let's move forward. We still have questions from the audience. No, Trump barked. I'm not done. You think you're so tough. So righteous. Where were you when cities were burning? Jasmine didn't flinch. I was there. Talking to families. Talking to small business owners who lost everything. Listening. Because leadership starts there, not behind a camera. Not behind a slogan. The message landed with weight. Even Trump couldn't jump in. The silence grew heavy before he finally forced out a laugh. You're very emotional, aren't you? Jasmine gave a faint smile. No. Just human. Applause erupted, louder than before. The room had shifted. It wasn't about sides anymore. It was about tone. Empathy. Realness. Things Trump couldn't fabricate on live TV. The moderator's earpiece buzzed wildly. The control room was panicking, unsure whether to cut to break or let the drama continue. He signaled to hold. History was unfolding. Trump leaned in again, voice like ice. You're going to regret that attitude. People don't like disrespect. Jasmine didn't hesitate. Then maybe they're tired of watching it. That was the moment. The instant the story became bigger than the debate, reporters began typing furiously. Phones recorded audience reactions. Tweets were already flying. The moderator finally stepped in, voice trembling slightly. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll continue our discussion. The cameras faded out, applause breaking apart into scattered confusion. Off air, Trump stormed toward his aides, face twisted with fury. Jasmine quietly took a sip of water, answering a stagehand's whispered, "Are you okay?" with a soft smile. I've been through worse. But no one around them realized yet. Within minutes, the exchange would explode across every platform, and Jasmine's quiet defiance would become the story of the night. When they returned from commercial, the tension hadn't eased, it had fermented. Whispers rippled through the audience. Even the crew looked shaken. During the break, Trump's team had swarmed him with frantic advice. His communications director leaned in, whispering, "Sir, pivot to jobs. Keep cool. Don't give her another headline." Trump shoved the advice away. No. I don't back down. Nobody talks to me like that. Especially not her. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat quietly, reviewing notes she didn't need, heart steady, gaze calm, aware of every eye on her, the audience, the cameras, her colleagues. She didn't look at Trump again. She didn't have to. When the red light blinked back on, the moderator forced professionalism into his voice. We're back with President Trump and Representative Jasmine Crocker. Let's continue our discussion on rebuilding America's economy. An audience member stood, a small business owner from Omaha. "Mr. President," he said, "my shop never got the relief you promised. I applied 3 times. What do you say to people like me who feel forgotten?" Trump leaned forward with the smile of someone trying to sell a bad product. "We've done a tremendous job. You probably applied at the wrong time. Billions have gone out. Everyone knows it." The man frowned. "I still got nothing." Trump's smile cracked. "Well, we can't help everyone." The line hit the crowd like a dropped brick. Murmurs, discomfort, disbelief. Jasmine's brow tightened. She leaned forward, with respect. "Mr. President, that man's story isn't unusual. Millions feel left behind. This isn't about who you helped. It's about who you didn't." Trump swiveled toward her again, irritated. "There she goes, doom and gloom. You people love bad news." "It's not bad news," she said quietly. "It's reality." This time, the moderator didn't even try to step in. Because this wasn't about 2 politicians anymore, it was about 2 entirely different visions of the country. Trump scrambled for footing. "You know the fake media is watching this. They'll twist everything. They'll make her the hero and me the villain. They love angry women who attack Trump." A groan rolled through the room. A woman shouted from the 3rd row, "She's not angry, she's honest." Cameras caught her face, a clip that would explode online within the hour. Jasmine remained focused. "This isn't about media," she said. "It's about leadership. Leadership means hearing people even when you don't like what they're saying." Trump puffed up. "I've been listening my whole life. I listen to America. That's why they love me. She didn't hesitate. Then you should know love doesn't sound like shouting. The applause that followed was huge, bigger, freer. Trump's eyes darted toward the crowd, startled by how quickly control was slipping. The moderator spoke quickly. Let's bring in our next panelist. No, Trump cut in. People need to understand something. This isn't about policy. It's about me being attacked by someone who wants attention. Jasmine turned slightly, her voice steady as steel. I didn't come here for attention. I came because the people deserve better answers than excuses. Applause erupted again, loud, rising, undeniable. Cameras caught the moment Trump's expression hardened. Rick Delano, watching from backstage, whispered to an aide, "We've lost the room." The moderator tried to shift back to taxes and job growth, but the audience had mentally moved on. Every Trump comment drew sighs, every Jasmine answer drew focus. As the broadcast neared its end, the moderator asked for closing remarks. Trump grabbed the mic first. "No one has done more for this country than me," he declared. "And no one has been treated worse. I fight for you, even the ungrateful ones." Jasmine's turn came. She took a breath. "Leadership isn't about fighting people," she said. "It's about fighting for them. And sometimes that means standing your ground, even when it's uncomfortable. Even when the cameras are rolling." The audience rose again, applause drowning out the host's attempts to close the show. Trump stormed off stage, jaw clenched, ignoring everyone in his path. Jasmine lingered, shaking hands, thanking the crew. A young woman approached. "You said what we've been wanting to say for years." Jasmine smiled softly. "Thank you for listening." Backstage, producers exchanged worried glances. They knew what was coming. The clip was already spreading like wildfire. What began as an economic town hall had become the political moment of the year. By the time Jasmine reached her downtown Des Moines hotel, the world had changed. Her phone was overflowing, missed calls, frantic texts, exploding notifications. Her aide, Lauren Pike, was waiting with a laptop and the look of someone riding adrenaline. "It's everywhere," she said. CNN. Fox. MSNBC. All of them. Twitter's in meltdown. Jasmine exhaled. "Which clip?" Lauren turned the screen. The freeze frame showed Jasmine mid-sentence. "If I wanted to debate with a toddler, I'd have brought juice boxes," and Trump staring, stunned. The moment that changed everything. Lauren exhaled and said, "It's already been viewed 8 million times in under an hour." Jasmine paused, trying to absorb it. 8 million. Lauren nodded quickly. "And climbing. The hashtags are everywhere. Hashtag juicebox moment, hashtag Crocker versus Trump, hashtag respect is earned. You're blowing up on TikTok too. People are already remixing the clip." Outside the hotel, the crowd was growing. Small groups gathered near the entrance, some chanting her name, others holding up their phones to capture a glimpse of her. Across the street, news vans lined the curb, satellite dishes pointing skyward. The city hadn't seen this much commotion since caucus season. Upstairs in Trump's penthouse suite, the mood was anything but celebratory. Rick Delano stood by the window, speaking urgently into his phone. "We need to control the narrative. Call it disrespect. Call it unprofessional. Push that to every outlet immediately." Trump sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone with short, furious swipes. "They're all against me," he muttered. "She insulted the president on national television. That's treason." Rick hesitated. "Sir, it's not treason. It's just bad optics." "But we can," Trump cut him off sharply. "Optics don't matter. People should be outraged." He turned toward the mirror, adjusting a tie that didn't need adjusting. "They'll see I'm the strong one. They always do." But downstairs, strength was being redefined in real time. Every major cable network was running the clip on repeat. On CNN, a panelist called it, "the moment Trump finally met someone who didn't flinch." On MSNBC, another described Jasmine as, "the new face of accountability." Even Fox News couldn't avoid the conversation, airing the exchange under the banner "Clash at the Town Hall." Crocker crosses the line that I in her hotel room. Jasmine watched it all quietly from the couch. Lauren paced in front of her, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, we've seen the coverage. No, she's not doing interviews tonight, we're holding. Jasmine glanced up, and Lauren lowered the phone. Let it breathe, she said. The moment is too big to chase. You already said what people needed to hear. Jasmine leaned back, exhaustion setting in as a muted news anchor repeated her quotes. She never cared for viral fame, she wanted change, not hashtags. But she could feel the shift. She'd struck a nerve. Across the country, reactions split along familiar lines that in small towns, big cities, barbershops, diners, the same debate unfolded. Some called her bold, brave, refreshingly honest. Others insisted she'd crossed a line that a retired teacher in Dallas told a local station. It's about time someone called him out. A man in Boise grumbled, she embarrassed the president. That's not leadership. In Washington, strategists were already whispering her name like it belonged in conversations about the future. Jasmine's team watched the numbers skyrocket, millions of views, thousands of new followers, an avalanche of media requests. Supporters sent messages thanking her for speaking the truth. Trolls flooded her inbox with threats and insults. It was chaos, both digital and emotional. Lauren finally stopped pacing. We can ride this. People love authenticity. You didn't plan it, and that's why it hits so hard. Jasmine rubbed her temples. I didn't go there to make a moment. I know, Lauren said gently. That's exactly why it became one. Across town, Trump's aides worked overtime trying to stem the damage. A hastily drafted statement was prepared for the morning. President Trump remains committed to strong leadership and will not be distracted by partisan attacks. Even his supporters knew it rang hollow next to the clip dominating every channel. By midnight, late-night hosts had picked it up. One joked. Trump finally met someone who won't buy what he's selling, not even with a coupon. Another rewound the clip and said, watch closely. You can pinpoint the exact second he realizes he lost control. Jasmine turned off the TV. This isn't a joke, she said softly. It's bigger than me. Lauren nodded. It is. You showed people what accountability looks like. And they're starving for it. Jasmine walked to the window. Down on the street, a few supporters still stood holding signs that read "Thank you, Jasmine." She smiled faintly. If this wakes people up, she murmured, then it was worth it. Her words would later be quoted everywhere, in editorials, speeches, interviews, but in that quiet hotel room, they were just a tired whisper between two women trying to understand what they'd set in motion. When morning finally broke over Des Moines, the headlines weren't just about a viral confrontation. They were about a shift, in tone, in courage, in who the country was suddenly paying attention to. Jasmine stood at the window again, watching the peaceful streets bathed in sunrise. Her phone buzzed non-stop behind her, but she didn't reach for it. For a moment, she just needed stillness. The night replayed in flashes, the crowd, the cameras, Trump's tightening jaw, a storm that was still growing beyond the horizon. The laughter, the silence that followed her final line, none of it had been planned. It wasn't rehearsed. It came out of frustration and conviction, the kind that builds when you watch people struggle while those in power treat it all like theater. Her chief of staff, Lauren Pike, stepped into the suite carrying 2 coffees. You haven't slept, have you? Jasmine gave a faint smile. I've done worse on less sleep. Lauren handed her a cup. The press wants you on Good Morning America. CNN's offering a full segment. Everyone wants to know what's next. Jasmine looked down at her coffee. What's next? We get back to work. That's not what they want to hear, Lauren said with a sigh. I know, Jasmine murmured, but it's the truth. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind shared by people who understand each other without effort. Then Lauren's phone buzzed again. She frowned. The White House just released a statement. They're calling your behavior disrespectful, unbecoming of an elected official. Jasmine let out a soft laugh. Disrespectful is refusing to answer the questions that matter. Lauren sat across from her. Do you regret it? Jasmine paused before answering. No. I regret that it had to happen on live television. But sometimes the only way to cut through the noise is to speak louder than it. The room fell quiet. On the TV, a panel of analysts argued, split screens, sharp opinions. They dissected her tone, her facial expressions, her choice of words. None of them discussed what she'd actually said. Jasmine turned away. It's funny, isn't it? A woman raises her voice and it's attitude. A man loses his temper and it's passion. Lauren nodded. You flipped the script. That's why they're rattled. Jasmine shook her head. I didn't flip anything. I just refused to play along. She moved to her desk and opened an old notebook. The pages held scraps from her early campaign days, statistics, speech fragments, scribbled thoughts about leadership and justice. One note stopped her, speak even when your voice shakes, because silence is how power stays comfortable. She ran her thumb along the page, remembering the nights she wondered if anyone would ever listen. She'd promised herself that if she ever earned a platform, she wouldn't waste it. Lauren watched her. Last night wasn't just a moment. It was a message. I didn't plan a message, Jasmine said quietly. I just told the truth. That's why it hit, Lauren replied. People can tell when someone's real. Jasmine breathed in, looking out the window. Down below, news crews were already setting up, cameras pointed at the building, waiting for a comment. They'll want me to turn this into a spectacle, she said. But this can't be about me. It has to be about something bigger, leadership, respect, decency. Lauren smiled. You sound like someone running for higher office. Jasmine let out a soft laugh. I sound like someone who still believes politics can mean something. The morning spun fast. Calls came in, colleagues congratulating her privately but refusing to say anything publicly. Others told her to tone things down before the story got out of control. One even said, you made your point. Now let it die. But Jasmine wasn't wired that way. She'd seen too many people swallow their truth out of fear. When the calls finally slowed, she sat down to write. Not a statement. Not a press release. A reflection. She opened her laptop and typed slowly, leadership isn't silence or submission. It's speaking truth when it's unpopular. I respect the office, but respect must be mutual. America deserves leaders who listen before they lecture. She read it once, then hit post. Within minutes, her words were everywhere. Celebrities shared it, activists quoted it, even rivals acknowledged the honesty. The tide shifted, not because she'd challenged Trump, but because she'd reminded people what leadership should sound like. Lauren looked up from her phone. It's happening again. Your post is exploding. Jasmine took a sip of coffee. Let it. A wave of calm washed over her, mixed with the exhaustion that comes when you realize a line has been crossed and there's no going back. This wasn't about a viral moment anymore. It was about credibility. Authenticity. Courage. That night, long after the cameras moved on, Jasmine stayed in her room and called her mother. Her mother's voice was warm, proud, steady. You spoke from your heart, baby. Just keep that heart open. Don't let the noise close it. I won't, Jasmine promised. After they hung up, she sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker. Accountability, she whispered. That's where it starts. But the country wasn't finished with her. And by the next week, that private reflection would become something larger, a message about courage, humility, and the quiet kind of strength that reshapes a nation. 1 week later, Jasmine Crocker stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, facing a crowd that stretched the length of the reflecting pool. Autumn air carried a cool breeze, but the energy felt electric, steady, alive. She hadn't planned the rally. It had started with a few grassroots groups organizing an event called Voices of Accountability. But once word spread that Jasmine would speak, attendance surged. People drove in from neighboring states, holding signs that read, respect is earned, leadership is listening, and one that simply said, juice boxes for everyone. The irony made her laugh as she walked up. The laughter. The silence that followed her last line. None of it had been planned, that it wasn't rehearsed. It came from pure frustration and conviction, the kind that grows after watching people struggle while those in power treat it all like performance. Lauren Pike, her chief of staff, stepped into the suite with 2 coffees. "You haven't slept, have you?" Jasmine offered a faint smile. "I've done worse on less." Lauren handed her a cup. "The press wants you on Good Morning America. CNN is offering a full segment. Everyone wants to know what's next." Jasmine stared down at the coffee. "What's next? We get back to work." "That's not what they want to hear," Lauren sighed. "I know," Jasmine murmured. "But it's the truth." A quiet pause settled between them, the kind that only forms between people who understand each other without speaking. Then Lauren's phone buzzed again. "The White House just issued a statement," she said, frowning. "They're calling your behavior disrespectful. Unbecoming of an elected official." Jasmine chuckled softly. "Disrespectful is refusing to answer questions." Lauren sat across from her. "Do you regret it?" Jasmine thought for a moment. "No. I regret that it had to be said on live television. But sometimes the only way to cut through the noise is to speak louder than it." The room fell quiet again. Across the suite, the TV showed a panel of commentators arguing about her tone, her expression, her phrasing, everything except what she'd actually said. Jasmine turned away. "Funny, isn't it? A woman raises her voice and it's attitude. A man loses his temper and it's passion." Lauren nodded. "You flipped the script. That's why they're rattled." Jasmine shook her head. "I didn't flip anything. I just refused to play along." She walked to her desk, pulling out an old notebook filled with campaign scribbles, statistics, speech fragments, scattered thoughts on justice and leadership. One page stopped her. A note she'd written during her first run for office: "Speak even when your voice shakes, because silence is how power stays comfortable." Her thumb brushed the edge of the page. She remembered those nights of doubt, wondering if anyone would ever hear her. She'd promised herself then that if she ever gained a platform, she wouldn't waste it. Lauren watched her. Last night wasn't just a moment. It was a message. "I didn't plan a message," Jasmine replied. "I just told the truth. That's what makes it powerful," Lauren said. "You were real. People can tell." Jasmine looked out the window. Down below, news crews were already gathered outside, cameras ready. "They'll want to turn this into a spectacle," she said quietly. "But this can't be about me. It has to be about something bigger: leadership, respect, decency." Lauren smirked. "You sound like someone running for higher office." Jasmine exhaled a soft laugh. "I sound like someone who still believes politics can mean something." The morning rushed forward. Calls from colleagues, congratulations whispered privately, caution urged publicly. "You made your point," one senator told her. "Now let it die." But Jasmine wasn't wired that way. She'd seen too many people silence themselves out of fear. When the calls slowed, she sat at her laptop, not to write a statement or a press release, but a reflection. Leadership isn't about silence or submission. It's about speaking truth when it's unpopular. I respect the office, but respect must be mutual. America deserves leaders who listen before they lecture. She read it once and hit post. The reaction was instant. Celebrities shared it. Activists quoted it. Even rivals acknowledged her honesty. The shift wasn't because she'd insulted Trump, it was because she'd reminded people what leadership should sound like. Lauren glanced up from her phone. "It's happening again. Your post is blowing up." Jasmine took a sip of her coffee and smiled. "Let it." Calmness mixed with exhaustion. Something irreversible had begun. This wasn't about a viral clip anymore. It was about credibility. Authenticity. Courage. That night, when the cameras moved on, Jasmine stayed in her room and called her mother. "You spoke from your heart," her mother said gently. "Just don't let the noise close it." "I won't," Jasmine promised. After they hung up, she sat by the window, watching the city lights shimmer below. "Accountability," she whispered. "That's where it starts. But the country wasn't done with her yet. A week later, Jasmine Crocker stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, facing a crowd that stretched across the reflecting pool. The autumn air was crisp, but the energy buzzed, steady, alive, impossible to ignore. She hadn't planned this rally. It had begun with grassroots groups calling it voices of accountability, but once word spread she would speak, attendance exploded. People drove in from nearby states, holding handmade signs, "Respect is earned, leadership is listening," and one that simply read, "Juice boxes for everyone." The irony made her laugh as she arrived. What started as a spontaneous quip had become a symbol of resistance, of humor, of courage. Lauren stood beside her, scanning the crowd. "I count at least 12 news crews. Fox, CNN, BBC, even Al Jazeera. You're officially global." Jasmine adjusted the microphone. "Let's hope they're listening for the right reasons." When she stepped forward, the crowd fell silent. Thousands of phones rose, red recording lights glowing like a constellation. "I didn't come here to talk about one night," she began. "I came to talk about what that night revealed." The silence deepened. "Last week, I sat beside the most powerful man in the country. And when I asked for respect, I was told I should be afraid." She paused. "I wasn't. Not because I'm fearless, but because fear stops working when you've seen too many people suffer in silence." A cheer rippled through the crowd. "I didn't call him a toddler to insult him," she said. "I said it because I'm tired of watching leaders act like power means yelling the loudest. Power isn't volume. It's responsibility. It's the courage to admit when you've failed and the strength to listen when others speak." Applause swelled, pulling even the reporters into its tide. "We talk a lot about respect in this country," she continued. "Who deserves it? Who demands it? Who's denied it? But maybe we've been thinking about it wrong. Respect doesn't start at the top. It starts with how we treat each other when no one's watching." Behind her, the Washington Monument rose like a sentinel. "The people who built this country didn't always agree," she said. "But they understood one thing: democracy doesn't survive on silence. It survives on accountability." Lauren glanced at her phone. "Over 2 million people watching the live stream." "Some say I was disrespectful," Jasmine said. "Maybe I was. But I'd rather be remembered for speaking truth than for staying quiet to keep someone comfortable. Comfort doesn't build anything worth keeping." A roar shook the air. "This isn't about me," she said, raising a hand. "It's about every teacher who speaks up when the system fails their students. Every nurse who calls out negligence. Every citizen who says, we can do better. That's leadership. That's patriotism. That's love of country." Her voice softened. "My mother once told me, the truth might cost you peace for a while, but silence will cost you your soul." She looked across the crowd. "I remember that every time I walk into a room where people want praise instead of truth." Another beat of silence. "If you take anything from that town hall, let it be this: never confuse confidence with character. And never mistake volume for vision." Someone shouted, "We're with you, Jasmine." The crowd clapped until the space throbbed with unity. "You don't have to be with me," she said. "Just be with what's right. Hold every leader, me included, accountable. Democracy isn't a spectator sport." People cried. Others stood stunned, absorbing every word. "1 week ago," she said, "I was told I should be afraid. But I'm not. Because truth has its own armor. And it's stronger than power, stronger than politics, stronger than pride." She stepped back. For a moment, only the wind moved. Reporters rushed forward, but she turned away, walking down the steps, shaking hands with veterans, teachers, parents, students. No entourage. No bravado. Just presence. Lauren joined her at the bottom. "You know, you just changed the conversation." Jasmine smiled. "People changed it. I just said what they already knew." That night, her speech played across every major network. Analysts dissected it. Pundits argued, but ordinary people replayed it because it felt honest, raw, unpolished, real. And the weeks that followed, teachers quoted her in classrooms. A mayor referenced her words at a community meeting. Authenticity had finally pierced the noise that in her next interview, when asked how she felt about becoming a symbol, Jasmine said, "I don't want to be a symbol. I just want to remind people that speaking truth is still possible." She paused, and if that makes some people uncomfortable, maybe that's exactly where change begins. Because respect isn't given by power. It's earned by integrity. She looked straight into the camera. If you believe accountability still matters, if you believe truth can stand up to power, subscribe. There are more stories worth hearing, worth sharing, worth remembering.